Our host today is Jessica Cook. Jessica is joined by Jim Silveria, Chief Information Officer, Nicole Pollock, Chief Innovation Officer, and Mark Johnson, Data Administrator, all from the City of Providence, Rhode Island. This webinar is designed to be interactive, and we encourage your questions. Just use the Send a Question to Staff feature in GoToWebinar, and we'll answer as soon as possible. Again, thanks for joining us today. Let's get started. Jessica?
Thank you, Patrick. So hello and welcome to today's webinar with the City of Providence on how they launched and adapted their open budget software for greater utility. As my colleague Patrick mentioned, this is an interactive webinar and we want your questions, so feel free to send them in using GoToWebinar at any point, and I'll pose them to our presenters as soon as it's convenient. Speaking of our presenters, Jim, Nicole, and Mark, let's open with learning a little more about your background and your role with the City of Providence. So maybe we can start with Jim. Can you tell us a bit about your background?
Hi, this is Jim Silveria. I'm the Chief Information Officer for the City of Providence, and I've been here a little more than 4 years. I've been working in government for about 15 years now in IT, and I've worked in a lot of different public information systems and transparency applications, and pleased to be working with Socrata and taking advantage of the programs they have.
Hi,
Wonderful. Nicole.
Yeah. Hi, this is Nicole Pollock. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer for the City of Providence. I've been working for the city for 6 months, and I've been working for government generally for around 6 years. My background is in process efficiency, program development, and policy.
Great. And last but not least, Mark.
Hi, Mark Johnson. I'm the Data Administrator. I've been here the longest. I'm not sure that's a good thing, but it's been very interesting. My background is actually math, analytics, Wall Street, that kind of thing. But I'm both the sort of go-to guy for information out of the system, our ERP system, and also for analytics.
Great. So let's kick it off with our first question today. Why did the City of Providence choose to pursue a policy of financial transparency?
Well, the city has been working on transparency apps for several years. A lot of this came out of the former administration's commitment to open data and transparency in government. I was able to serve on a commission for open data and transparency, which included members of the city staff, city council, as well as we opened it up to the public. We had several information technology and outreach residents in the City of Providence. So it was a good group. We put together a number of recommendations for what we could do in the city for general improvements on public outreach, providing better access to government and information. And the result of this, one of the results was our open data site. And as that continued to evolve, we were able to move ahead with the open budget application.
Great, and we will be doing a live demonstration of that application at the end of the presentation for our attendees who want to see it in action. Moving on to our... Oh, go ahead.
There's also the definite view that it not only helps the public, the media, when we publish things openly, it also forces us to be better.
Right. Right, and so this is like they both said, it's basically the next logical step in our open data agenda that we have here in the city.
Fantastic. So moving on to the next question then, tell us what the city's goals were for the initial implementation of open budget.
So this is Nicole, and I'll field the start of that question. Really simply, the first goal was really to launch on time. We run on a fiscal calendar that begins July 1st of every year, and we do a mid-April release of our proposed budget every year. And we actually launched, we'll talk a little bit more about this later in the program, but we actually launched a new version of the open budget application, which had just been launched publicly by Socrata the day before. So there was a lot of logistics that we had to ensure were worked out before we were able to have a smooth launch for our budget with the new version of the Open Budget app. So really one of our major goals was to launch on time, to make sure our data was displayed properly, and to make sure the details and data structure were easy to understand. A lot of our internal financial management categories aren't easy to understand maybe for someone in the public. So we did a lot of work over the weeks leading up to the launch to ensure that categories, titles, amounts, how things were displayed were intuitive and made sense to a general user. And you know, in addition to that, so those are really basic kind of administrative rollout goals. Our overall goals are really enhanced access of the information to residents, news outlets, and other interested parties. Another functional one is to get rid of paper. We print so many copies of our budget. It's a very long document, and the Open Budget app allowed us to go digital with our budget in a way that we hadn't been able to do before. And then again, another big goal was to build in our press and outreach strategies kind of accordingly or with the launch. Press and outreach were traditionally done based upon a paper budget and kind of static visuals and information. And so we had to work very closely with our communications team to ensure that the way we were talking about the budget, the way the mayor's speech was written about the budget, all reflected the work we put into the Open Budget application.
So we've already had a question come in, and it's on this topic, so let me pose it to you now. How did you decide what data sets to use in that initial implementation?
Well, we were provided with a schema, which essentially is the framework for how the application works. And there's several levels and layers of data in the way it's presented, starting from high level, say, in the budget, high level spending, citywide spending, then down to, say, top level department, then sub level department, and then from there going down to the individual accounts or expenditure type within that department. So that structure was already in place for us.
And it matched our internal data structure pretty well. We did have to make some modifications, but as far as the older version only had expenses, operating expenses, also there was a capital expenditure as well, but it didn't have revenues. So we opted, when we went with the newer version, the brand new version of Open Budget, we had to go along on the revenue side as well.
And then finally, we were also able to use to post both a proposed budget, which coincides with the way our mayor develops the budget for the years. We had a proposed budget which was launched initially in April, and then that is modified somewhat through the city council approval process until we have an approved budget, which was enacted toward the end of June. So we're able to post both a proposed and approved budget for the current fiscal year as they happen, as well as go back several years. And we just selected to go back the past 3 years and post similar data from those budget years.
Great.
Subsequently added another year, but yeah.
All right. Let's move on to the next question then. So you launched with the idea of an ongoing project that you would change based on feedback. And why did you sort of take this approach?
So one of the major ones is, I think that's the way we approach any of our projects at this point, is we know that the initial launch is not going to be perfect. This is the first time we tried this. And so we knew that we'd be making modifications as we went. We've worked very closely with Socrata on enhancing and kind of making some tweaks to the tools to better meet both our needs and probably the needs of other municipalities around the country. So we knew that there was a willingness and openness to do that. So that's one of the reasons why we kind of have that attitude, is we know we can have that that approach in working with Socrata. We also knew we'd want to modify the tool and enhance it based upon internal and external feedback, which would trickle in over time. So the day we launched the budget application, we got an hour before we launched a piece of feedback that we weren't able to implement that day or use that day, but we worked with Socrata over several weeks to integrate and change to modify the program to respond to that feedback. We also really care about and work to accommodate feedback on any of our open data tools. So that's kind of our approach to open data generally. So it's more of a reflection of a bigger approach we take as a city to open data and government transparency.
Great. We have a few questions about your feedback tool, but I know we're going to discuss that a little later, so I'm going to hold off on that for now. Let's go to the next slide then. So what kind of feedback did you get after the launch, both internally and externally?
Well, one of the items we received internally was a different way to view the data, and that was structuring and breaking down the accounts to provide a different level of detail. So, for example, we have within the city, we have some very, very large, probably our largest set of expenditures has to do with personnel salaries, benefits, medical, dental, that sort of thing, as well as retirement benefits. And the way we budget is that is all under one account, and it appears to be a very, very large item. So, one thing we did is, looking at this and looking at how it kind of skewed the graph and shrunk down everything else relative to that large number, we broke that out into several different budget items. So we have one line now for salary, one line for benefits, one line for retirement contributions. We did that in a number of different accounts just to provide a little more detail, but also provide a little bit better presentation.
Keep going.
As I say, and then another piece of feedback we got internally was the way the budget application presented our data is it started at the high-level program, and then to the department, and then to say the account or expenditure type, with a few levels in between there. And that's the way we create our budget. That's the way probably every city and state works in their budget. However, if you wanted to see, well, I don't care so much how does just IT, how much are they spending on salaries? I want to look citywide. What are all of the salaries across the city? And view the different accounts that way from the expenditure type. Well, so that was a request we had internally. We weren't able to do that initially, but that was a feature that Socrata rolled out within a couple of weeks to kind of flip the data upside down and allow you to search either by program and department or by a specific expenditure type and drill back up.
So in other words, you can see the police department's retirement expense, or you can see the whole city's retirement expense, depending on which view you select. That was a big change that Socrata made for us.
Right. So just like going to some of our external feedback, we get a lot of obviously inquiries from press about our budget when we're rolling out specifically the proposed budget in mid-April. So many of the press contacts that we have with the city utilize the Open Budget app and did some of their reporting based upon numbers or information they found on the app. So as a press tool, it was very, very helpful. Also, we have a pretty robust, I would say, open data advocate community here in Rhode Island and in Providence specifically. And so they were actually very positive about it and wanted to see the city invest in this and expand our open data initiative. So it accomplished that goal, and that we continue to show them our ongoing commitment to open data tools. And then overall, just like Jim and Mark said, people just wanted more ways of seeing the data and wanted more ways of organizing the data. And that's something, again, that Socrata has been able to do for us.
Just out of curiosity, at the point of the original launch, did you reach out to your open data advocates and press to sort of let them know that this was being implemented?
Yeah, we did. So it was built into a lot of our upfront communications about the budget. So we do a lot of, I would say, anticipatory or meetup press to when the budget address occurs, and the open budget application was a part of that strategy.
Have you heard of any of your, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm all set.
Okay. Have you heard of any of your open data advocates creating applications using this data yet?
So not necessarily specifically the open budget information, but they do use a whole collection of data that we have on our open data portal.
Fantastic. All right, so moving on to the next question here. So we've talked a lot about getting the feedback from that initial implementation. Can you go into more detail about how you solicited that feedback, and did you have any comments that were unexpected or surprising?
Well, we did do a good deal of testing internally with staff here, with our IT department, with our communications department, the mayor's office, our finance department, just to make sure that we were structuring the data correctly, in that it was, essentially giving the story that we wanted to tell and presenting that well. So, some of the things that came out of that, like I said, was the different views, say the bottoms-up view of looking at our expenditures from the account or expenditure type rather than from the department down, which was the way everybody was used to looking at it. And the more we thought about it, hey, that does make sense. Rather than drilling down through every individual department, say, to find those expenditures, let's group them all together. So that was kind of a surprise, but when you think about it, we realized that that was actually a great suggestion. We also had a custom form developed through our open data portal, which is linked from the open budget site, which allows people to submit or send feedback to the city. And that all lands in an internal data set. So as people are making comments, we're collecting those, and sometimes we'll make an individual response, or if there's anything that we feel we need to elevate and request a change to the program, we'll take that action as well.
I'd like to add one difference between the original open budget program. The graphs were up and down, vertical, and in the new version they're horizontal, which makes more sense because all our displays now are widescreen, aspect ratio, whatever. But that still didn't cut it for some of our top level services or whatever. We have taxes, we have property taxes, we have cars, and we have tangibles. Those kind of dwarfed the certain other things that we wanted to show, like payments, collections for fees and licenses and payments by nonprofits and whatever. So we did have to adjust some of our, and this was resulting from a result of feedback, adjust some of our top level things to go a little against our normal structure of financial data, and some of your other people, other organizations would probably want to do the same thing. They probably have the same issue.
And then the last thing I'll just add is that a more general piece of feedback we heard, or at least I heard interacting with some partners in the public, was surprised that we were able to get it up and running so quickly in a new administration, because we had a new mayor come in January, and we had quickly to turn around and pull together a budget for mid-April. The fact that we were able to roll it out so quickly and get up and running so quickly, I think was impressive to a lot of folks who thought we would eventually get there, but weren't expecting it this fiscal year.
So for attendees who perhaps come from more of a financial background than a technical background, can you give us some of the technical details about your feedback tool, like where you decided to place it on your site, how you gather the information? Is it just text-based or screenshots?
Well, we will get to a demonstration, but essentially there's a link on the top right corner of the page, which I believe it's labeled Send Feedback. And like I said, that opens a custom form, which is built into our open data portal. Just allows people to enter a couple of fields. I don't believe we have anything where they can upload screenshots or attach documents at this point.
But perhaps we could do more, like, invite recommendations for the budget or something like that. We have not implemented anything like that yet, but we've talked about possibilities like that.
Great. Okay, so moving on to the next slide here. So tell us, you kind of touched on it during the whole presentation, but just in detail, how did you customize Open Budget in response to all this feedback?
We more or less already said that.
Yeah.
We adjusted our regular financial structure so that it would look, reasonable on a graph, more balanced on a graph. We allowed for the up and down view. We're going to get maybe talk a little bit when we talk about the future and current. We're going to be adding actuals. We've actually done that on the test version, but and also we'll talk about forecasting as well.
Okay, great. Well, we'll jump right ahead then to the next question. This is the last one before our demonstration. So tell us, what is in the future for Providence's Open Budget implementation?
Okay, yes, that's what I was just saying, that we have a test version up with actuals alongside the approved budget, and the way it works is it sort of replaces the proposed and approved. It goes approved to actuals. So you have the comparison between approved and actuals. That's what makes sense. And that looks great. I think Socrata is working on being able to shift between years more seamlessly, because right now, if you're focused on a budget, you're focused on the one active budget. Whereas when you're comparing actuals to budget, you kind of want to see it from year to year. And right now, it's sort of a kludge where they're entering changing the website to see a different year, but you guys are working on the ability to actually enter the year, and it would automatically shift. Now, a big thing is, the City of Providence has been struggling financially, and we have to submit forecasts, 5-year forecasts for the city, and I think the real future for us is in displaying forecasts, and this might be with Open Budget along with Open Actuals, or it might be in another tool like Data Lens, where we're showing what the situation is, our projection today, but if we change, when new policies are implemented, that projection hopefully improves.
So that's exciting, and that's something that we're working with Socrata right now internally on. So I think we're going to continue to work in partnership with our project manager to try to roll out and kind of expand the functionality of the tool so that it does more of things we would like it to do, like what Mark was just talking about. I'd say from a marketing perspective, we'd like to be a little bit more thoughtful and do more some advanced build-up marketing and communications work around open budget next year, because we'll have more time to kind of anticipate it, and we'll know what to expect, rather, compared to this year where we kind of were just launching very quickly for the first time. And then I guess the overall future is that we're going to, as the first bullet says, we'll continue to grow and use this system and program and build out our open data and open budget tool sets. So we want to keep using it. We want our residents to get used to using it, and we're dedicated to doing this in future budget years. So.
Great. So we're going to go to the live demonstration now. Let me just make you the presenter, and then you can show us around. There we go here.
Okay, so you should be viewing the City of Providence website at providenceri.com, and as we mentioned, we do really have a pretty strong commitment to making data more open and available. So we've linked to several applications here on the home page, including our open data portal hosted through Socrata. We have an open meetings tool, a number of GIS tools, maps, and census data, which is available, as well as our open budget application. Okay, so looking at the landing page, one of the I think great features of this is the ability to kind of customize a story and not just leap right into charts and numbers and tables. So from the home page, we're able to customize the image in the background, the text, a welcome message. In the case of the City of Providence, we only have a single revenue budget and a single operating budget. We don't break out between operating and capital budgets, but that is a third option that you would be able to add. We also have additional information and text linked from that home page, just to give a little bit more of an explanation and highlight the points of the budget. So these are some great features that built into the homepage just to make it a little more welcoming when you land there. Additionally, as mentioned, the feedback tool. This links right to our open data portal. This is the custom form that we built, which we are using for feedback. It links directly into a data set. We get notifications, or I get a notification when anybody submits feedback to us. So, taking a look at the revenue budget, these are, approved and proposed numbers for the current fiscal year. As Mark said, we did have to break out our some of these categories where we had property taxes, tangible taxes, and excise motor vehicle taxes, previously all in one group. They're now broken out into three, and the presentation looks a little bit better. The application allows you to drill down into each individual level and easily navigate down to a level of detail, as well as jump back to any level within there. Taking a look at different departments, this is our inspection and standards department, responsible for all building permits, and we receive revenue from each of the individual permit types in there. So again, this is just another breakout of the revenue from these departments, and it's really a great presentation, both for city staff and people working on budget development, as well as for the public to see where is revenue coming into the city and how do these different revenue streams compare to each other, and perhaps where should we be focusing some additional effort. Again, this is a great presentation. When we're looking at say hiring new people, we can see the majority of our money in that department is coming in through structures. If we had some additional inspectors that we could dedicate to that area, we might be able to move along some of those inspections a little faster. We might be able to even produce some additional revenue for the city. Okay, all of these are available in that graphical view as well as a tabular view, and then we've also, as I mentioned, loaded in details for the past several years, going back to 2012. So all of this data can be viewed over time or in a table. Now, one item, again, going back to our revenue side, is we do not tend to specifically map revenue to expenditures. So, for example, we don't say property taxes out of our $253 million in property, it's specifically broken down to particular expenditures. However, this is a tool that's built into here. We just kind of broke it out proportionally to expenditures on our major departments. I think we're going to look at this again next year and take a look at some of our grant funding, where we may have specific revenue from grants that go to a particular program in our workforce development, or say in planning, public safety, or emergency management, and take advantage of this tool to show specific revenue, specific grants are actually being spent in specific departments.
The dynamic schema and show different views of data by category.
On the budget side. Okay, so now jumping over to the budget side, again, the City of Providence just has an operating budget, but we do have the ability to include both operating and capital budgets. So, this is another example where we broke out expenditures, where we had several different groups under kind of general non-departmental spending, which included debt financing and a few other departments in here, which actually would have landed above total expenditures for school, and we broke those out into several sub-departments or subsections in our expenditures to kind of give a better graphical presentation and give an additional level of detail. So again, this is a pretty intuitive, simple to navigate. If you want to see what's going on in our Parks Department, we had made some changes in the structure of Parks Department in particular, so you can see what was proposed versus what was approved. Varies this year. We broke out our parks from our Recreation Department during the budget during the budget process, but we can really drill right down through any of these expenditures, see what we're spending, spending our money on. Okay, and then going back to the top level, this was a feature that we mentioned. Rather than looking at city departments, we can view by expense category or by services, or this is what I was looking for, or by the programs. And these are traditionally some of the more commonly requested data that we receive. We're getting requests from the press or from the public on what is the city spending overall in salaries or in benefits. And this is that, say, bottoms-up view that Socrata was able to implement to kind of flip our budget upside down, and rather than looking at, say, salaries for each individual department, you can look at it citywide. Additionally, we can drill through any one of these departments and see what are we spending in salaries in each of the departments, as well as breakdown of the different types of salary payments. And again, this has been a huge benefit to our public records request process by having this type of information online and this easily available. And some of these same features are available here to look at how are we spending money over time over the past several years. Okay.
No,
That was good. Excellent.
So, I guess that's kind of the high-level demo of the site. It's one of the nice. I think the best feature of this is it's very simple to use. It's very intuitive. You can't break it. You just keep clicking around on things, and you can always go back to where you started. But it's very, very simple to navigate. It's very self-explanatory. We were able to do some work on essentially labels. So these, I guess, program descriptions or service descriptions, we can put whatever we like in there within reason. And the breakout, which is shown on the side, having the number details and the percentages, that's calculated automatically. So we also did a little bit of work in transforming some of these labels and from our internal, say city speak financial terms to something that makes a little more sense to the to the public, to the average user.
Right. Usually our account numbers are in front, and then the description. That didn't make sense.
Right, so we basically flip these two around to make it easier. So again, we were able to do a lot with this tool to better accommodate our users and our customers, and to try to make it as easy for them to use as possible.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for giving us a tour of your open budget implementation. I'm just going to take control of the presenter again, and we have a couple more questions before we wrap up. There we go. And I am putting contact information up on the screen right now, so if any of our attendees would like to try it out themselves, they are perfectly welcome to go over there and give it a shot. So a few more questions before we wrap up. How big is Providence, and how big is the team that worked on this project?
Oh, that's a great question. We've got, and Mark Johnson here, we've got an absolutely top-notch data analyst. So I'm not going to say it's a team of one on the data and technical side, but he's pretty much taken the lead on that. And we're very fortunate that Mark works closely with our finance team. So just in terms of managing the uploads, formatting the data, that was pretty much handled by Mark.
Right.
Nicole and I worked on working on the layout, soliciting some feedback. We work with our press and communications offices, and it's a pretty small group of us that was able to put this together and get it up and running fairly quickly.
Our Socrata person, Christine, she's very helpful. She makes things very easy.
Excellent. Another question we have here, is the data pulled directly from your finance system, or are you feeding it with Excel spreadsheets?
Well, we upload CSV, which is more or less an Excel spreadsheet. I guess directly from our finance. It has to be uploaded, obviously. Yeah, but yeah, directly from our SQL database. Yeah.
And another thing to keep in mind is, at least in our case, our budget data is somewhat static. So once a budget is proposed, we're not putting all the iterations and negotiations going on that are really happening behind the scenes. What would happen if we, move a little more money into the Parks Department? What would happen if we adjust tax rate? Or what would happen if we change a benefit rate? So that's going on for several months while we're building the budget. But what we publish in the proposed budget, and then what we publish later in the year in June in the approved or the actual budget, those really become static, and we stay to those numbers throughout our fiscal year. So we don't really have the need to link this to a, say, a data set on our open data portal that would be updated on a daily or weekly basis.
Great. So one last question before we wrap up. Privacy concerns. Were there any privacy concerns, either internally or from citizens, as you started to the original open budget implementation?
We didn't really receive any, and I haven't heard of any in this particular data set over the past few months. Typically, we have a book. It had been, several years back. It's a spiral-bound paper book that has all of the same data in it. It's certainly not quite as easy to navigate and read, but it has, all of these numbers, all the account types, all the departments. All of that is public information, and we have been publishing this in a paper version for several years. And then for the past 3 years or so, we've also been publishing a tabular version of our budget on the open data portal. So this is not new information that we're putting out.
Yeah, I wanted to add that as we're considering and going towards adding actuals, there is somewhat of an issue there because, for instance, if we were to do 2015, they're not audited actuals, and it's still subject to change, and that might be an issue. And obviously, other types of now, if you get into the issue of forecasts as well, it's a little more sensitive, I would say. But other data sets like open expenditures and things like that, there you've got to be a lot more careful than I think than this particular product.
Great. Well, Jim, Nicole, and Mark, thank you so much for coming and putting together a great presentation today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks to all our attendees and for your excellent questions. And with that, we are going to close out today's webinar. Thank you very much, everyone.